something you learned? Were you born an entrepreneur?
You got to start small.
I have not allowed being a woman to hold me back.
Credibility is not just making money, it's about making sure that people trust what you're doing.
Law practice is not only about going to court, it's about advice.
It's very difficult to hire somebody who's not motivated and then make them motivated.
One of the things that I'm known for is integrity.
They have to see you as a person of integrity.
Hello and welcome to the Executive Lounge with me, Nshira Ado, and this, as always, is your preferred show, a thought leadership conversation that brings you nuggets of insights from the lives and work of men and women who have scaled the daunting heights of either starting their own businesses or managing and growing institutions here at home and around the world. My guest today is one that wears many hats, and as a result, founded the Innovation Group, a group of companies that provide a variety of services. In her own personal capacity, she is a visionary, she is an author, a literary advocate, a management consultant, and many other things. Join me as we learn more from Majorie Boafo Appiah, also known as Marge. You're welcome to the Executive Lounge.
Thank you.
It's well, it is an honor to talk to someone who has many hats. Where do you find the passion to make it all happen?
Well, I don't know. I guess I just make it work. I have a lot of role models that I look up to, and I'm inspired by a lot of great women, and I guess by watching what they do, I'm motivated to keep going.
Wow. So who are some of the people who've inspired or influenced your work, either up close via coaching or mentoring, and also from afar?
Well, I've had a lot of influences from afar. I admire Yajasi. She's an author. She's a Ghanaian American author. Also, Michelle Obama is a great role model. Oprah Winfrey, Gifty Auntie, Ava DuVernay, Shonda Rhimes. Okay. Well, I do admire some men as well. Bill Gates. Yes.
Seems you're in good company. Let's learn a little about you. I mean, you can't have a name like, Boafo Appiah and not be of Ghanaian heritage.
Yes.
What's your story as a Ghanaian? Where do you hail? What's family like and upbringing like?
Well, I was born and raised in Ghana. I attended Martin de Porres School in Dansoman. My parents are from the Kriapim region. My dad is Honorable William Ofori Boafo. He used to be a member of parliament for the Kriapim region. My mother, she's a lovely, lovely, warm woman, Mrs. Salome Boafo. My brother works with City FM, and I went to Ebri Girls for my secondary education. Then I went to University of Ghana, Legon. I was in Saba Hall. And from there, I went to pursue higher education abroad. I thought I was going to be coming back home, but love called, and we made a home in the United States, and we love it. Home is where the heart is. At the same time, I try to visit Ghana at least once a year.
Okay. So just keeping in direct contact with your roots, it's very important.
Yes, I do love my roots. I cook Ghanaian. I speak. I dance to a lot of hip life, Shatawale. And yeah, I remember one time my husband borrowed my iPod back in the day when we used iPods, and he said he didn't know that my iPod could speak English. Because I have a lot of
you only had quite a lot of local
Ghanaian music on there. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, great stuff. You seem to have quite comfortably, from where I sit, combined quite a lot of different things. I mean, being a management consultant requires a lot of burning of brain calories, and making time to author a book while doing a lot of work with not-for-profits and all of that. How are you able to find the space, and what kind of skill set do you need to be able to do the breadth of work that you do?
You have done your research quite well. You make time. It's about planning. You know what you're doing all week. You have your calendar out there and you have everything outlined. You know, I wake up very early in the morning to write because I can't fit writing into my day. And it takes a lot of planning. I do teach my family how to plan as well. In fact, my son went to the National Spelling Bee. The first time he went was in 2017. And before he qualified to go to the National Spelling Bee, I planned our vacation to go to Washington, D.C. to the hotel where the spellers stay, just to motivate him. And so we spent almost a week in D.C., stayed at the Gaylord Resort, and I'm like, hey, Adam, this is where you're going to go. That's the stage you're going to spell. And then he went back and he won his school bee, won the regional bee, and went to nationals. That's just to give you an idea of how planning works with the foresight.
It's a really interesting thing, and I'm sure that what you practice in life tends to feed into your work as a management consultant. I'd like us to dwell a little bit on the subject of management. You know, it's something that's evolved rapidly over time. And even now is more challenging, the kinds of things that you have to contend with. Hitherto, emotional quotients or intelligence wasn't something that was critical to successful management cultures. Where do you see the next evolution of management theory?
Well, I think it's important for us to be proactive rather than being reactive, because with the current trends, you don't wait for things to hit you. So you look into the future, and it all goes with planning so that you're ready for when anything negative might hit your business or whatever it is that you intend to do. You always have to look at your pros and cons, what your short-term goals are versus your long-term goals. Make sure that, you know, before we used to plan 5 years ahead of time. Well, it's good to know where you're going to go 5 years from now, but you know, maybe if you have a long-term plan for 3 years, and then you have your short-term goals so that you can hit it as you go along. And sometimes you might need to modify those long-term plans because of the current climate. It could be that the stock market is not doing according to plan, and you might need to move some money elsewhere to make sure that you stay liquid, or you know, whatever the current economic climate is may change, whether it's your for-profit work or non-profit work.
In the you know, the term I think is being agile. You know, the agility required in a world that is constantly volatile and disruptions are the norm today. What are some of the things that you would recommend for any management practitioner to, as it were, ensure that they're ready? I mean, the concept of planning, the concept of being flexible are quite, you know, broad and fundamental. But if they have to practicalize, you know, things they need to look out for to ensure that they're ready for change, or they're able to transition between changes in this volatile world, what would you think they need to do?
Well, you look at the current trends, because things can change depending on which political party is in power. People have personal agendas. And so you consider that climate. And as I said before, be proactive. Sometimes we tend to chide ourselves with the degrees or qualifications that we have, and we pat ourselves on the back. It's not really necessary to be bragging about your doctorate or your law degree or whatever accomplishment you have without having the work to show for it. And so you plan, you keep educating yourself, you learn what your trade really is about, because things do change with time. There are manuals that keep coming out for how we should practice as business owners, as physicians, you know, and so you keep abreast with the times so that you're able to manage your business successfully.
Okay. Now, you It's quite interesting, but you work as an MC. You're clearly a very affable person.
Sometimes.
And you're either speaking at one, event or moderating a panel somewhere. Um, is it as daunting as people make it look?
Oh, I think it's a personality issue. I just like talking. I enjoy emceeing events. I pick and choose. I don't accept every gig. It has to be something that I'm passionate about, or it has to be, it could be something cultural related. For example, during the Labor Day weekend, which is the first Monday of September in the USA, I had invitations to Texas, New York, Maryland, Virginia, DC, Atlanta, and North Carolina. I chose to go to North Carolina. Why did I do that? Because I could have done any of those other, I had one to even Minneapolis. I could have done any of those other gigs. The North Carolina gig was not so big a gig. It was the Asante Mine Association celebrating their anniversary. But I chose to do that because of my son. I wanted him to see the culture. And so I went with my son, his friends, cousins, to the Asante Mine Association annual meeting, and I hosted the weekend events. Well, he got to see a chief and steward, and I was proud that I had been able to teach the next generation part of our culture. I could have gone elsewhere and,
So the choices you make often tied to getting a double whammy.
well, sometimes, not always.
Okay.
But
Well,
sometimes.
it makes a lot of sense to be able to do that. I guess you only have a finite amount of minutes in a day, and,
Yes,
when an
yes.
opportunity presents itself, it's only fair that you take it.
Yes, yes.
Brilliant stuff. So, in your line of work, you've met and worked with different organizations of different
Yes.
sizes, interacted with people from different cultures and backgrounds.
Yes.
Do you recall one of the most difficult situations you've had to deal with in terms of offering support on cultural, business culture that, was a toughie for you, and how you went around that?
Well, in our line of work and with confidentiality, there are some things that you can't really talk about. But I should say that being a woman and being a black woman, sometimes it's harder. Over here in Ghana, we're all black. And so we don't face that kind of racism, discrimination. But when you're in another country where it's different races, there have been times that people have doubted your capability. You walk into a room, you have an idea, and someone may not be willing to listen. You have to work twice as hard to impress them, or you have to let them know that, yes, you do know what you're talking about. There have been instances where I remember one time I walked into a room, and maybe it was my fault that I decided to wear black and white attire, but they thought I was a waitress. Yes, and it didn't matter what I said, they were still asking me for the drinks. So that's something that you would have to grapple with. That's not necessarily intellectual, but race is real. Discrimination does exist.
And how do you get around it? Because I'm sure it's something that would recur, because you're going to, how are you able to pick yourself up from one experience and be ready for the next?
Well, I don't fall. I'm not phased. You can discriminate against me as much as you want. I am proud of myself. I am proud of the skin that I'm in. I know that I can do the work. If you assign that task to me, I know I'm capable of doing it. And so I just forge on, and I do my best all the time. And I surround myself with people who are supportive, people that I can look up to. I have several friends and family members who are very supportive. The African American community in my neck of the woods are very encouraging, and we stick together. That's the African Americans and the Africans. We all stick together. to make sure that we're working towards a common goal. And I do have some very supportive Caucasian friends as well. When I talk about discrimination, it doesn't mean that everybody is racist. There are some good ones. And so when you work together as a tribe, when you're unified, you're able to accomplish your goals.
We'll explore this concept of diversity.
Oh, yes.
I'd like to call it, because I think racism is just a very bashful word, and with very dastardly consequences. But we'll talk about diversity in a moment. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll go into that. So this is the Executive Lounge, and my guest is Majorie Boafo Appiah, and she's an author. She's management consultant, a visionary, a speaker at events, a master of ceremonies, moderator, and an all-round fun person. Stay tuned for more. Welcome back to the Executive Lounge with me, Inshira Addo, and my guest, the visionary, the author, the speaker, the doer, the all-round fun person, Majorie Boafo Appiah, who joins us with lots of insights. Early on, you talked about the fact that, look, racism is real. I believe so. I believe that it is. And but you are able to carry on. You're not fazed by what you see. What is within you that makes it possible for you to look past someone treating you with disdain or scorning at you, and say, I'm human, it gets to me a bit, but I'm not going to be worried about this. I'm going to stick to the main thing and do what I came here to do and then move on?
I think it's important for us to have mentors when we're growing up, and that instills more confidence in us. I look at my parents, I look at their level of confidence, and I look at what they've been able to accomplish. In fact, I visited the U.S. ambassador, invited me a few days ago, and I was in her office. I went with my dad, and she was talking about how my dad had helped the current U.S. embassy obtain the land that the building is, the current premise. And so when I look at stuff like that, it gives me confidence. I know that I come from good stock, and that my parents have been able to do it. My in-laws have been able to do it. And so I should be able to do it. Also, I surround myself with a lot of positive people who also happen to be go-getters. And so we do get together every now and then, and sometimes we share some of the negative things that may have happened to us, and we are motivated to keep going. Mm-hmm. When you realize that your friend or your colleague is down, you can always encourage them to keep at it, because Rome was not built in a day. True. And we're always going to have roadblocks, but it's up to us to persist and persevere.
Okay. Let's talk about the Shimmigrant.
Aha!
And that's your book,
Yes.
which you authored, the chronicles journey from, youth to adulthood,
Yeah.
told in a very poignantly funny way. Are you naturally funny? What inspired the plot and the language and temperament of the storytelling?
Well, the thing is, I think I speak the way I write. I did take writing courses at Duke University to write from the reader's perspective. So I tried to figure out, okay, who is my reader and what would they like to hear? And that's how I write. The Shimmigrant, once I start talking about the book, it kind of brings some personality change in me. I don't know if Margie is different from Majorie Boafo. And I start getting all giddy and yeah. But it's a story of a maidservant who lived in a fictional village, because she lived in Ashtown, which is not a real village. Mm-hmm. And then she moves to Accra, and she ends up moving to the United States, and it talks about her perseverance. I think I keep using these recurring words, but it talks about how she how optimistic she remained even through her trials. And I guess you would have to purchase the book to know the real story.
The real story, yes.
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 Yeah.
But I mean, so the creation of the character, the setting of the story, how much of that, I mean, what were the elements that came together to inspire the creation of the character and the setting of the story?
Well, when I was about 9 years old, I believe I was 9, yeah, I was a maidservant in a play at Martin de Porres, and my name was Akosiado. Some of my friends still call me Akosiado. The name kind of stuck with me. You know, and I wanted to write a book that would keep going. Like I could follow it up with a sequel and another sequel. And so I figured, okay, if I start her young, then I can give her, you know, she can be a teenager. I could get her into
You
her
have a lot
20s,
of runway to keep
30s, you know, 40s, she might have kids, and we could go to the kids, and yeah. And even the title of the book, The Shimmigrant, I thought about she, immigrant, and I said, okay, Shimmigrant is catchy, and we could actually have a immigrant. And oh, the teenager could be a immigrant. I think my brain is kind of basic the way I think, and so that was
I'm sure it will be fun to live in your head for a few hours. You know, 'cause it's it's quite interesting, you know, that you came up with a name and you already had thoughts of a follow-up and things like that.
Yeah.
Again, I'm sure that feeds into your whole ethos of planning for the future and being deliberate.
I try to be a good planner sometimes, but I'm not always that good, because
Nobody is always
you come
that
to
good.
my house and there's no food, and
Nobody is that good.
Yeah, life is not perfect.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. You know, so the stereotypes that we hear about, you know, that you're from the concept of the shimmigrant. You've come from a village to the capital, then to the big city somewhere in the United States of America.
Yes.
Do people truly go through the kind of transformation that we see Akosia go through?
Yes, people do go through that transformation. Everybody has a different story, but immigrating to a different country is not as honky-dory as sometimes people make it sound. In fact, there are people who might have upwards of $10,000 and invest that in getting papers to go abroad. Sometimes I feel like some of those ventures are not worth it. If you have that capital, why don't you use it to do something and make something of your life here? There's this disillusion that when you travel, everything is going to be better. It doesn't always work out that way. Yes, you could be very successful, but then also you could work hard back here and succeed as well. Those stereotypes really, there are different characters in the book, and we tend to see those types of characters in every facet of life. The bosses who were living in Accra, we do have those type of people. The protagonist's parents who were back in the village, you know, expecting to receive money for their daughter's services, we do have those types of people. The book is real. It just deals with everyday issues that usually you don't have authors talking about that.
Okay. In your own experience, how much of the hurdles that, not on the professional front, of course you've talked about racism being one of the things that you have to deal with, but how has it been possible for you to maintain a level head, not lose your heritage, and essentially be able to still stay connected while living away from home?
Well, I'm that girl who took 3 for O levels.
Okay.
So I've always been into culture. And I really do identify with my African American brothers and sisters. and they're always willing to learn about culture. So I live the culture, I teach the culture, because, you know, at the end of the day, we're all one people, humankind, whether you live in Asia, Europe, USA, Africa, wherever you are, we're all humans. Living with being authentically Ghanaian is something that I think some of the people, when they travel, they try to fake it. And when they come home, they try to speak slangs. Or even when they're abroad, they try to act like they can't speak the Ga or the Tree or the Ewe. They're lying. You don't forget. What do you mean you don't understand? Especially when you've been brought up here, you know? So you just have to make that conscious effort, because what? You want kenke? Well, there's kenke in the African store. You want fufu? Well, now we have fufu powder. What really is your excuse? Unless you just want to become so foreign. And when I say foreign, I mean when you have the Hispanics practicing their culture when they travel. They speak their language with their kids. You have these Indians speaking their language with their kids. Nigerians do. And then Ghanaians, as Spri Contemporary, we just want to speak English and be high and mighty. Why are we doing that? Why are we adopting foreign culture? Now, don't get me wrong. I am all American as much as I am all Ghanaian. But I know that it's important to have something to go to. If you are a Jew, you have the Jewish community. You know, if you're Asian, you have the Asian community. We all have roots. And so it's important to appreciate our roots, because it gives you a sense of belonging. If you don't have roots, then where are you going?
Oh, interesting thoughts on that. We can never depart from our roots.
No, we can't.
Unless you make the decision mentally that you will depart from it. But
Yes.
it will always be in there.
Inadvertently, you know, it's always in there. My take is sometimes you really don't want to have anything to do with your culture. And that's fine if that's what you want to do, or if that's how you want to lead your life. But if you want to retain parts of your heritage, this is the year of return. Look at the number of African Americans who have come back home. You know, if you want to retain your culture and your heritage, you are still able to do that.
You know, I'm glad you mentioned the year of return. I was watching an interview with a personality, a media personality, and Akon, who was very proud about the fact that growing up, he was born in the States, but was raised in Senegal until he was of school-going age or junior college-going age. Then he moved to the States. And he's saying that at this time, if you're an African American or an African living abroad, this is the time to start looking at the continent for investment. I'd like your thoughts on that.
Oh, it's wonderful to see African Americans come back home and to be vested in our community. In fact, I have a dear friend back in Spartanburg. Her name is Mary Thomas. She and her crew are making plans to come to Ghana next year to offer training, American style, you know, for people who would like to know how to fundraise and just bring a wealth of information back here. Back to your question, it's a good time to invest back home. We went to the Kumasi Mall. My in-laws live in Kumasi. And I saw the mall for the first time. I've been to Kumasi, but I never went to the mall. So when we saw it, I said, oh, this is a really nice mall. But you know the question my son asked? Who does it belong to? How did they acquire this piece of property? Do they have partners who invested in the project? That's a 15-year-old kid. So if we can have our kids have that kind of mindset and invest and be the leaders, you know, when things are going well, it usually comes from the top. So if we have them as the leaders and we have people who are accountable, Africa can be a world leader. I read a book by Lucy Quest called The Bold New Normal. Lucy's quest is to get Africans to just rise up and be accountable so that we can make our continent the best place to be.
It's all very possible.
Yeah.
You know, but what do you think has been the shackle that may have held us back over time?
Bureaucracy. There's a lot of bureaucracy. The money just tends to stay with the rich and the poor stay poor because when you walk into a room and you have ideas in Africa, sometimes people are not willing to listen to you. And I have said this about, we may have a very qualified person from KNUST, an architect, very well decorated, or maybe an engineer for that matter, and they will put a bid in for a contract. Our own people will not accept the bid. They would rather give it to a Chinese who is maybe a roadside person back in China. And we will, we have to learn to appreciate our own people and utilize the talents that we have. And it's not just about utilizing the talents that we have. We also have to learn to be accountable. We're paying taxes. Where is that tax money going to? Things shouldn't be going into people's pockets all the time. I mean, of course, people should get paid, but I'm talking about the bribes and the extra money.
Holographed, yes.
Yes. Because if we want to build our country, we all have to do it together.
If we have to work together, do you feel that the kind of agency that an average American will have is present here? And what would you say is the difference between the agency that, say, a Ghanaian would have towards accountability as compared to what an American would have?
Well, I think, in America, that if you give a bribe, you probably be caught. Not that people are not doing it. I was very surprised. Recently, some of these famous movie stars had paid bribes to get their kids into colleges. I'm like, you people are so rich. Why did you have to do that? Your kid can go to any college and still come and chop your money. I mean, but for the average person in America like me, I wouldn't even think about giving a bribe. Or if I get pulled over by the police, I would not think about reaching into my purse for money because I know
you probably get shot for that. Eh?
Oh my God, don't even talk about that. But don't get me started on that one. But the thing is, when we know that we're supposed to abide by the law, it makes things easier. Our culture is such that we have great things, but at the same time, we just also tend to go with the status quo sometimes. And that is bothersome because, this is how this one is done. Or, Honorable wants this. So even though Honorable may be wrong, we will still do it because it's coming from Honorable. No, that shouldn't be the case. If we are able to build that level of accountability with our people, I think we could do greater things. It's a matter of building that culture. Maybe it's too late for the older folk, but with the younger folk, with the mindsets that we have, I've listened to my nieces and nephews. They are brilliant. They have aspirations. If we're able to build on that, and if we're able to show them that our culture does work and that our people are great people too, representation really matters. I mean, I love all cultures, Lebanese, Indian, but I'm just saying that this is our country. Let's build it together and let's give reverence where reverence is due. If you're getting that bid from a Ghanaian who can do the job, please give it to that Ghanaian. And if you're getting it from an American who can do the job as well, far better than the Ghanaian, then maybe you should give it to that person. Base it on credibility instead of, that old boy mentality.
So we must stick to meritocracy and try and give people an opportunity because they deserve it, because they've qualified to do that.
Yes.
You mentioned that, a lot of cultures or a lot of jurisdictions will practice what some would refer to as protectionism, that the first right of refusal would go to someone who's local, an indigene, to bid or take a contract or do a project. Whereas here we tend to look outside first before we come back in. How do we fix that for the younger generation? Because sometimes you talk to young people whose aspirations and the examples that they have are not even of local or indigenous Ghanaians whose footsteps they want to follow. How do we stop telling the stories, or how do we stop looking outside and getting young people to draw inspiration from within the country, from people who are here doing well?
It starts from the households, not the schools. It starts from the households. We have to teach our children. You know, we have them watching foreign channels. These young people are watching Disney and seeing these girls who are blonde and, you know, nothing against the characters. But if all that the kids see is foreign influence and they don't get to experience the black excellence that we have here, what do you expect? They would think that they would want to emulate what they see. Now, what they need to understand is that there is black girl magic, there is brown boy joy, and there are people doing great things, representation matters, that look like them. And so at home, that's what we have to teach them. When they love the culture and they don't shun it, they tend to learn more about their people. Now, I know that Book Nook, is it Book Nook? Yes, Book Nook Ghana, Nana Ire Damwa. He has a lot of books written by African authors. He has children's books. I see children reading books, and it's all this series. And when I was growing up, I did the same. It's a lot of Caucasian kids on the covers of the book. Well, you know, there are African books out there as well. Get your kids to read those books. Let them see themselves in books. Let them see people who are excelling, who look like them. When I came around this time, we launched Project Lit, which is a literacy program. We did that at the Nancy Library. And I brought books written by African Americans and Africans. So books by people of African descent, and we distributed those books. I've been to visit other schools, secondary schools, elementary schools, and my goal is that these kids would learn about us, about our culture, and appreciate it. And, you know, it really does make a difference when they learn from the homes, and then when they go to schools, the teachers, the onus would be on those teachers to support these kids, because they are the future. And by doing that, having the mentors and the role models, we probably do have a future.
Okay, fantastic. We're going to take our final break. When we come back, we'll have just a little more time to get some more out of my guest, Majorie Boafo Appiah. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is the Executive Lounge with me, Inshira Ado, and my guest, Majorie Boafo Appiah. And we have had a good time so far. And we only have just a teeny weeny bit of time left before we say goodbye to you. If you had to do it all over again, how different would you have ordered your life?
I think I have to say that God ordered my steps. And so, you know, I would have done the same thing and give praise to God for where He's landed me. That should be my answer. But you know, when I was growing up, I just thought that being a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, an architect was the only way to go. I don't want children to think that. There are opportunities out there. You look at the trends. There is technology out there. There are so many avenues where you could be successful. You look at even some of these wealthy people who may not even have graduated from college. I'm not saying they shouldn't go to college, You know, it's not, university is not for everyone. There are some people who are going to excel going to college. There are others who are going to excel through training school. There are some who just have the brains to be great businessmen. And so if I had to do things over, I would not have had that old mindset of just pursuing education, going on to get a doctorate, and that, you know, and going to just work for someone. I would have looked at what I was really good at and from the get-go pursued that. You know, but all things being equal, life has turned out pretty good. I am very grateful for all the opportunities that God has put my way.
Oh, wonderful. Well, and I think this would be the final question, and then I can do a wrap-up of our conversation, which really would be about your writing journey. Should we expect more from you?
Oh, yes. Thank you for asking that question. I actually have a book coming out in 2020 called Same Elephants. Yeah, and basically it's elephant me, elephant you.
Okay.
So same elephants means we're all the same. Back to my concept of being humankind.
Yeah.
I was actually planning on releasing the book cover yesterday, which was Thanksgiving Day, but then there was a big article about my son in the Washington Post, so he kind of stole my thunder.
Okay.
So we'll wait and release the cover
The
later.
thunder struck in your home, that's all that
Yes,
matters, right?
yes, yes,
Awesome stuff.
yes.
Well, thank you so much, Majorie,
you.
for making time to talk to us. And this is where I shared the 5 things I'm taking away from this conversation. Number 1 is that you must remain rooted. No matter where you find yourself on the continent or the world, you must remember where you're from, the people you belong to, the culture that you're exposed to, the language of your mother, the mother tongue. Never forget that. In that you'll find your identity, and in your identity you will have the kind of difference you stand at. You'd be noticed, and that's the way to show the world who you truly are. Number 2 is that you should constantly pick yourself up, no matter what obstacles you come across, the hurdles you face, be it bureaucracies, be it systematic hindrances, racism, or what others will call the glass ceiling. Never stop pounding at the doors of success, no matter what happens. Pick yourself up and go on again. Number 3 is family is important, and family is not always going to be the people who you share the genes and the DNA with. It will be the people you choose to bring positive influence into your life. So they can be mentors, they can be friends, they can be colleagues, they can be people you have heard of. And they could be of different cultures, as in Marge's own experience. You can be black, have Caucasian friends who have great positive influence on your life. What matters is that these people together contribute something far greater than you would have found within your own self. Number 4 is the importance of diversity. That you can't be everywhere at the same time. But if you can attract different people from different places and parts of the world, backgrounds, cultures, into your world, then you're able to see the world through a broader scope than you otherwise would. And the final thing I'm taking away from this is that you should always look to your passion. That's the fuel that's going to keep the engine going. That's what's going to make you wake up every day and keep doing the things that you do, even when it doesn't make sense to the people around you. It's been a wonderful time coming your way with the Executive Lounge, and it's been nice talking to you, Majorie.
Well, thank you so much.
Great
My
stuff.
pleasure.
All right. And thank you for watching. We'll be back with more another time on the Executive Lounge, where we showcase the best minds. I'm Inshira Addo. Go forward, make rain. Shalom.